Salutations, ladies and gentlemen, the Knife Raven here, back again with another video. And in today's video, well, I'm going to be taking a look at a pattern that I don't often discuss. And that is a knife from the brand Katz. Now, Katz Knives is a very intriguing brand I've talked about, I think, only 2 times before. And it's a brand founded in Canada and produced in Japan. And it's a bit more, I suppose you could say, underrated. But they make a variety of fixed and folding knives. But what interests me the most about this brand is their folding traditional slip joints. The first one I talked about was this model. And this is a Stockman, a Katz Stockman with a drop point blade. And I was very, very impressed with this knife. And I talked about it a few months back, and not that long after, I showcased a lockback in Cocobolo. And that one was not quite as well put together as this particular one, but it was still an excellent knife nonetheless. Now, today I'll be taking a look at something very similar to this, and that's because it's another Stockman from Katz. However, there are 2 very distinct differences. Now, you saw this earlier. This actually came with the knife, and this is a very nice, genuine leather pouch. It's actually been used a bit. I've been carrying this every day since I got it, and it is made in the USA, but it has this nice clasp here. And within, I present to you my second Katz Stockman, and this one is in some very nice, genuine stag. Now, I can never rely on the camera to actually pick it up very well, but this is a very nice bit of stag. You can see on the other side too. Get this one out of the way. But this is, again, it's a pattern I've already talked about before, and it is really the same knife, but there are the 2 key differences. The main one being the handle, where this one is ashwood, very smooth, very nice grain to it, but this one's bumpier and more textured. You can also see it is thicker, as is expected with stag. But the thing about this one that I really like, and I'd almost go as far to say it makes me favor this model over the ashwood one, is the blade, which is a beautiful clip point. And this is traditional as to what a Stockman would normally feature. The Stockman being a pattern from Sheffield, and of course, similar to the Barlow, it was very much favored in the colonies, and thus became a bit of an American favorite and an icon, if you will. And Stockman knives have been produced quite extensively in the USA, and they almost always feature 3 blades of this configuration. We have a clip point as the main primary blade for the majority of work. We have the straight edge of a sheepsfoot, also sometimes called a coping blade, a nice point. And lastly, we have our Spey blade, or Castrator. And you can imagine this set of blades would be quite ideal for those working around a farm or in the outdoors. And while this knife would probably still be suited for urban living and an office life, the roots of this knife are very clearly meant for the working man. But even so, we'll take a look at the fit and finish on this model, as it is very well put together. And again, starting with materials, we have, I believe, nickel silver for our pins. I could be wrong. Are those nickel silver? I believe these are nickel silver pins. Nickel silver pins, brass linings, a nice polished back, We have nickel silver bolsters, which are milled and pinched, which gives a very nice touch. Of course, on both sides. And we have our genuine stag in the center, or I should say as the covers. And get a bit of a nicer angle here. The stag is somewhat simple in its color scheme. Some stag tends to have a bit of red or orange in the bark, but this is a very simple, I suppose you could say, dark brown and gray. But despite the simplicity, I think it looks very nice. Here's the other side. You can see this one is a bit heavier on the darker accents. Very comfortable in the hand. You have your main blade, again, clip point profile. The blades are all satin finished and swedged. Very nice swedge on this blade. Out of the box, we're looking at a shaving sharp edge, and the only issue I have with it is it did come this way, but I believe there is a very small bit of blade wrap right in the center. There we are. Don't know how well you can see that, but there is a very tiny little bit of a chip there. But that's definitely not the worst case of blade wrap I've ever seen, and that can probably be easily remedied. But it is worth noting there isn't exactly a stop pin in here, which is unfortunate, but many traditional knives suffer from this. We have the Katz logo stamped on the tang. Also very nice sharpening choil. Nothing on the other side. Blade pull, very comfortable. I'd give it a good 5, maybe not quite a 6. And on the closure, again, I don't want to snap it. It still has a fairly good bit of, I guess you could say, bit of a detent. I hope that didn't make it worse. Doesn't seem so. No. Okay. Guess lesson learned. Always walk the blades down and be quite careful in that process. You don't want to drop them. You have your central blade. The Sheepsfoot, this one's an easy 3. Very light pull. Again, bit of an uneven edge here, but still ridiculously sharp. And this one has the details on where it was made and the steel. It's made in Japan, and the steel is XT80. And I've talked about this steel before. It, I believe, is quite an old steel compared to some of the, of course, the modern powder metallurgy and such. But this is a fairly old stainless steel that seems to be within the realm of the takes an edge quickly, loses an edge fairly quickly, has moderate corrosion resistance. I definitely wouldn't say it's a super steel, but from my experience with this version of the knife, I would still definitely say that it's more than enough for traditional knife duties. But closure, again, about a 3 or a 4. And this blade, which has very little snap, but I'd say that's about a 3. Nothing on the tang of this one. Again, the blade is razor sharp. And got the shape of a Spey blade. Definitely not my favorite blade shape, but if it's on a Stockman, I don't really mind. Comparing the action of this piece to the older one, similar snap for the main blade. I'd say that the Sheepsfoot on this one's a little bit snappier. And the Spey is about the same. Again, very similar overall. Although you can see when in the closed position there is quite a noticeable difference with where the nail nick is placed, and that is of course due to the overall profile of the blade. Let's check for gaps. I don't believe there's any gapping here. Looks fairly clean. Hold up to the light to confirm. Light test suggests that there is no gapping, as nothing is shining through here. Except, of course, the reflection of that back spring. That is very, very shiny. Two back springs, I should say, with a spacer. I do always appreciate having that third liner whenever there's more than one spring. Transitions are very smooth. Pins are, well, you can never truly tell with a stag knife, but they feel quite smooth. This one's a little bit raised, but you can see that due to where the stag is positioned. Don't know if I'd call that a flaw, but it is noticeable. I definitely say that the pins are smoother on this one, but this is a much sleeker handle overall. Doesn't have that rough texture that stag tends to give. Blade play on all three blades is, I believe, non-existent. Nope. No blade play, and from what I remember, this model doesn't feature any either. Alright, well, it seems on the front of blade play, Katz is doing a very, very good job. I definitely say the fit and finish on these is above average. However, the price is worth bringing into account. And this is my main, I suppose you could say, issue with Katz knives. As it turns out, when I got my first one, this one here, which was about a $96 to $100-ish Canadian, it turns out this was an absolute steal. And the store that I bought this from, which has unfortunately gone out of business now, which also sold me this one, this was an auction item, apparently they were very much underpricing these, as one of these can run you up to 190 US on the high end. And that's quite expensive. That is beyond the cost of a GEC. That's within Boker Zollingen price ranges, which, again, definitely is not budget friendly. This version, I got an even better deal for. This was, I believe, the auction price was around 60, 65. It was less than 70 Canadian. And considering the fact that you're getting a knife that, when converted, could cost almost 260 Canadian, this was an absolute steal. I'm not sure if these are discontinued like the Gentleman's series of knives, but even if they aren't, these are very elusive and hard to find. Blade HQ is sold out of all of them. I don't think Knife Center or any other mainstream stores seem to have any of them at the moment. And if you happen to come across one, you're not going to get it for probably anywhere near what I got mine for. So I think I got very lucky here, as this knife, which is supposed to cost almost as much as a Taylor's Eyewitness Premier collection, I got it for the price of an Arthur Wright. And the quality that this knife offers is absolutely impeccable. I suppose it should be noted that there are those little bits of handmade labor that are quite evident in this. It does not look machine-made, especially when you look at this. This is one thing I did notice. And I suppose some could consider this a bit of an off-putting flaw. the spring is a little bit raised in the open position for the main blade. And that is one thing that, unfortunately, is there. But overall, aside from that, maybe that, I don't even know if I'd call it raised, but that somewhat exposed pin, the overall quality is very impressive on this. And I would say this is within the range of a GEC or a Boker. But yes, this is a very, very nice knife, and I normally don't buy the same thing twice, unless it's an Ettrick, of course, or Slim Barlow. But in this case, 2 different blade shapes, 2 different handle materials, and also for how inexpensive this one was, and the fact that probably if I passed it up, I'd never get one of these, I definitely thought it was worth it. So, again, I would not hesitate to recommend these knives if you can find them, and preferably get them for a good price. They aren't cheap at their normal cost, and that is understandable considering the quality that you are getting. But no, I've been very lucky to get these for the prices I've been getting them at, and if I happen to see any in the future, I think I probably will pick up more of them. I've been curious as to what the single blade version is like, perhaps in the jigged bone variety, but no, overall these are very nice knives, and I think that the brand deserves a bit more love than it gets because, well, despite being a little less mainstream, the knives that Katz produces are very much above average. So, thank you for sitting through this video, and again, my overall thoughts on this is a great knife, and I really like the Stag. Again, some might say it's not the best Stag ever, but I think it is quite striking, and this knife just oozes old school charm. And for those who have watched my channel for more than 10 minutes, you will know I very much enjoy my traditional knives, and these definitely appeal to me. Despite not being a huge fan of multi-bladed knives, and the Stockman's certainly not my #1 favorite, it still is a very nice knife to carry, and especially considering the pouch that this knife came with, I could definitely see myself bringing this along on a belt quite frequently. So, there we are. There are your Katz Stockmans in Ashwood and Stag, drop point and clip point. And again, these are made in Japan with XT80 steel, handmade, or at very least handmade with factory processes involved. But overall, I'm quite impressed with these, and if you can manage to snag one for a low price, well, by all means, go ahead and get one, because if you like Stockmans, you will very much enjoy these, as they're definitely better than anything Case is offering at the moment. So, there you are. There is the Katz Stockman in Stag, and this is the Knife Raven, as always, signing off. Goodbye.